Bueno, buenas tardes y buenos días. Buenos días aquí en este lado del charco y buenas tardes en España y en Europa. Es un gusto enorme presentar este INCASI Living Lab extraño desde dos lugares diferentes, pero aquí estamos. Yo de estancia y Anitta también de estancia, cosas que suelen suceder y que pueden cruzarse y que los IPs les puede pasar. Bueno, aquí estamos para presentar a Anitta a ver si lo digo bien, Kynsilehto, que es Finnish. Así que ella es de la Universidad de Tampere, va a hacer la presentación en inglés, va a presentar Access to Rights Regardless One's Status. Este es el título de la presentación. Es acerca de la migración en Finlandia. Y cambió, she's Associate Professor in Tampere, Peace Research Institute en la Universidad de Tampere, y her research focuses on global mobility, migration, social movements, and solidarity practices. She is interested in post-colonial and decolonial approaches, ethnographic methodology, and the concept and practical uses of intersectional. Así que, Anitta, si quieres subir la presentación y comenzar, tenemos aquí unos 20-25 minutos de presentación y después abrimos la discusión. Si puedes poner la presentación es en subirla en compartir.
Muy bien. Okay, so you do see the presentation.
Okay.
Adelante. Yes. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So my title, as Sandra was introducing me, is Access to Rights Regardless of One's Status, the Production of Illegality in Finland and its Contribution to Enhancing Inequality. And I would start by saying that the condition of not having a regular migration status is itself a source of multiple inequalities. So it's quite difficult to actually say that it wouldn't produce any. But of course, in differently situated people's lives, it has different types of impacts and of course, in terms of different types of life course aspirations of these people. And in this presentation today, I will outline the setup and main results of a commission study we conducted with colleagues on undocumented migrants' access to social rights in Finland. And VNK, the abbreviation here, it's for the Prime Minister's Office. And they have this very special funding instrument to commission and conduct studies that had high societal relevance and what the government at place had identified as a need within their information needs. And our study, well, the main report in Finnish was published last year when the study was concluded, Katisko and company, including myself. And we are still working on the data to produce the academic articles and continue this discussion because, as I will explain in a moment, the political context and the legal context in Finland has changed quite a bit since the study was conducted, and unfortunately not for the better. I will also reflect upon factors that are contributing to the production of illegality. So the reasons why people encounter difficulties in getting a first permit in the first place or extending their residence permits. And I will also point out how this contributes to the production of inequality in the society at large. And finally, and I'd be very happy to have more of this discussion with you colleagues on the Spanish context, because something I did find out during my secondment periods here, where that there was a recent proposal by the Spanish government to provide venues for regularization to people without a regular migration status. And that would have been one of the recommendations, or that was one of the recommendations that we did propose to our government at place. But these propositions haven't really been taken forward. Well, the setting of the study, as I said, it was commissioned by the Prime Minister's office, so there was a particular call for proposals that was launched in the beginning of summer 2021. The timeline of the study was from September, well, roughly 1 year, a little bit more than 1 year, from 21 to 22, September to September. And what we did when we were responding to the call, we formed a research consortium with the Diakonia University of Applied Sciences, which is a polytechnical university that is mainly training social work professionals. So they are very implicated in social work praxis and research. And in Tampere University in Peace Research Institute as partner. And we were a team divided between these two higher education institutions with two senior fellows, Maria Katiska, who was the principal investigator, and myself in the two respective institutions, and team of researchers who came either from social work, from critical migration studies, or from economics. And we also had two research assistants, Iris Annola and Kati Viljanen. Also. And so the main research interest was to understand how is undocumented migrants' access to social rights effectuated in Finland. And by asking this question, already the Prime Minister's office was firstly identifying that there is a population living in Finland without a regular migration status, without a valid residence permit. And secondly, that these people actually would be subjects of social rights. And that was actually quite exceptional in the Finnish context, because the whole phenomenon of undocumentedness has been relatively recently acknowledged in the context of Finland. Well, let's say more broadly than amongst those groups who are sensibilized to different types of disparities of access to residence permits. And here I'm referring to, let's say, migrants' rights groups or civil society organizations that work with people in the asylum process or with different types of migration trajectories, or perhaps different religious dominations, which gather, say, multicultural international population and who are more aware than, or have been more aware than population at large, that these situations as regards residence status may change. What we did was to collect data among public service providers, so public social work sector and third sector actors, meaning civil society organizations and some religious denominations as well, located in different parts of the country. And we chose 7 municipalities across the relatively vast territory of the Finnish state, because we also knew beforehand that the context in Helsinki, in the capital city, and basically any other part of the country is very different in terms of municipal regulations and all that. So Helsinki being traditionally or longer term more progressive than other parts of the country, and because at the time we started the study there was no like national legislative framework of providing, let's say, healthcare or something. There had been attempts in 2015, for example, but that was turned down by the Finnish parliament. Our decision since the proposal phase was to focus on those who work with or are likely to work with or likely to encounter people who are living as undocumented, and not to attempt to work directly with people living in such situations. And for us, that was foremost an ethical issue. So it was about the question of visibility of the person to systems in place and the society at large. So to say, not to be trying to out people who are not willing to go public in any way, because we wanted to make sure that we are foremost protecting this population, unless there are some actual responses to the situations that we could offer, which we didn't have. So our methods of data collection, we resorted to mixed methods, drawing largely on qualitative data collection and analysis, mostly online group and individual interviews via Teams, very small part in presence. And this was to respect the COVID restrictions that were applicable during the research design phase. So we didn't know whether we are able to travel to different municipalities, and that also impacted our choice to work with professionals and not with people in undocumented condition themselves, because it would have been more risky again with this online interview setting. And we did qualitative content analysis of relative government reports, legislation, but then also some critical research that had been produced within similar instruments as regards to changes in asylum law and other such developments that were at least hinting at the existence of people in undocumented condition in Finland and reasons for that. And our quantitative data collection included statistical data from Kela, which is the National Social Security institution, because municipalities, when they are offering services in social work or in healthcare, they can claim these costs from the National Social Security institution. But we found out that these sums that they were discussing were very small, and some municipalities were not. Well, they were probably aware of such possibility of reclaiming such costs, but they found that it was too laborsome to actually start reclaiming such costs. So we are actually talking about very small numbers of very small amount of money here. And then we were also distributing online questionnaires to the municipalities who were participating in the study for their overall evaluation of the situation in the given municipalities or broader region. Well, the political and legal context, there were numerous reports actually that were published, I mean, ranging from non-discrimination ombudsman's report to the parliament, to legal aid reforms. Well, there have been earlier one that was cutting legal aid to asylum seekers, and then a new one in August 21, restoring fairer legal aid for asylum seekers. There were studies by the Ministry of Interior about the overall question of solving the situation of undocumented people in Finland, and also a citizens' initiative called Permit to Live that was asking for a one-off legalization for people who had sought asylum, but because of the asylum law changes had fallen through the cracks and continued to receive negative decisions over time. However, in the elections in the spring 2023, so very shortly after our report was published, we had parliamentary elections, and the ensuing government has very different priorities than the previous one. And the current government is extremely hostile to all forms of immigration, and this has obviously provoked quite a lot of societal debate because they have practically mapped all forms of immigration, including highly skilled migration, which which has traditionally been something that Finland is hoping for, and like within such logic, for people in undocumented position, they have no right to existence in the country, let alone have any access to any rights. Well, what we did observe over the period of our research, or through analysis of our research results, is that this well, there is a production of undocumentedness, so production of illegality through law and practices. So for one, it's changes of law which impact then possibilities for a person who would have been entitled to a residence permit under the previous one, that they are losing it when the law changes. And also a matter of interpreting the law by the immigration service, and this is yet again accumulated effect, because those people who are working with people in precarious residence conditions, they need to be aware of what kind of advice to give. And when the landscape is so much in flux, as well, again in the current context with changing migration law, well, especially since last September onwards, again, it's difficult to keep up with what exactly are the premises and what other conditions under which people have been entitled to a residence permit, and how they can or cannot do it in the current period. Well, there is no precise definition of undocumentedness either, and this is something we discussed a lot with our interview participants, because there are relations between different laws that are also defining social rights. So you have the Constitution, which guarantees basic rights for everybody, regardless of the nationality status or the residence status. But then there is the residence-based social security system, which is defined by local and currently regional authorities, but then also with the national social security institution, as I mentioned. And so people can have registrations at one level, but then not in another one, and this impacting also people with valid residence permits. But then about this lack of precise definition, I said earlier that this whole realization that such population may even exist in the country is a relatively recent one, and this is partly related, or can be taken back to the context in 2015 and an increased number of asylum seekers coming in the country during that year, and more people getting into contact with those people. I mean, Finnish nationals coming into contact with people who were struggling with their asylum processes, and this coupled with legislative changes that were implemented soon after 2015, that made it again more difficult for certain populations to access asylum in the country. And so there is this increased awareness, but something that it has also produced is that those people who arrived 2015 or after, they are the correct kinds of undocumented persons, but that they would be qualitatively somehow very different from those who had ended up in undocumented position before, and this does have certain implications to those who are then deemed to be provided services for, and well, this mainly applying to the public sector, but not only, and which somehow also translates into this, and I put this in quotation marks, right kind of undocumented person. So that the person deserving social rights in the country would have these moral correlates of person that they ended up in that situation through acceptable forms of undocumentedness, not by others, like, for example, due to difficulties of changing permits due to changing life conditions, like coming from student visa to a worker's permit, or as one example of that, or then anything connected to family statuses. And that there are race, gender, and hierarchies of passports that are reflecting onto this production of undocumentedness, and who is considered as a deserving undocumented person in the country. Well, one big question there is the question of deportability, and which is now, again, with the change of government, very much emphasized, as with many European Union member states currently, is the likelihood of being subject to forced removal, and this risk, this question of like looming possibility of deportability or removability, plays a role in whether a person is able to seek help in accessing their social rights. And so people might even be aware that they are entitled to certain rights, but they are not. They don't trust enough the service provider that they would legitimately go and claim their legitimate rights. Well, these removals and deportations, as I was saying, are often offered as a response or solution to undocumentedness. But this approach doesn't address the fact that there are many paths to undocumentedness. So it's kind of putting the blame to the victim, and not offering alternative paths to be able to access and maintain a residence permit. And one big recommendation that was really transpiring through our interviews was that there is a need to facilitate the passage between one permit category to another, because that's one big factor that is blocking the possibility to re-regularize oneself once ending up in undocumented position. And finally, I would leave you with this question: that how does all this translate in a context that can be characterized as a post-welfare state? And I put the reference to a recent paper we published with my colleague Maria Alastalo in Environment and Planning C, on looking at these trajectories or migration trajectories of people. It was another project, but even if this whole concept of post-welfare state is not something recent as such, the realities of welfare state have been discussed and debated for a long time. But what I'm seeing in the current context, or what we are seeing in the current context in Finland, is that those kinds of grounds, including this type of at least perceived universality under the ideology of post-welfare state, and the kind of social cohesion that would draw on such ideology of the state is being dismantled. And which, again, if we go back to the question of inequalities, it's creating or multiplying inequalities with national resident population, but even exacerbated when there are persons with varying migration statuses or lack thereof. And yes, I have my
Thank you.
references.
Thank you so much, Anitta. Thank you so much. We changed to Spanish because Anitta speaks very well Spanish. For the presentation, okay, but now cambiamos. Anitta, si podés contestarnos hacemos la ronda